Welcome to Clay Mastermind with Don Grant. Mental excellence and industry insights. Brought to you by the Clay Lab, your ultimate podcast for mastering the mental game of clay shooting and gaining exclusive insights from the top minds in the industry. Join us as we dive into the strategies of elite athletes, uncover the secrets to peak performance, and share powerful techniques to enhance your shooting skills. Plus, get behind-the-scenes access to the leaders and innovators who are shaping the future of the clay shooting industry. Get ready to elevate your game, sharpen your focus, and gain insider knowledge from the best in the business. Let's get started. Here's your host, Don Grant.
Okay, folks, welcome to Clay Mastermind with Don Grant, and I am interviewing different industry experts and shooters of all different levels, and I appreciate all the feedback I've been getting. I'm happy to hear that many of you have really been enjoying this podcast and kind of my interview style. So thank you for all the compliments, and I have with me here Dominic Bethel. So thank you for being here with me, Dominic.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. This was a little unexpected invite, but was happy we got a chance to sync.
It's all good. You have a lot to share, and I love, introducing. Not introducing. You've been in the industry for a long time, but for those folks that don't necessarily know what you've been doing and what you're up to, I don't want to just interview the top 10 best in the world people. At least at shooting, I'm sure you're top 10 best in the world at something.
Yeah, industry guy. Yeah. Yeah. That'll depend on who you ask, I suppose.
Yeah. And I am getting a lot of good feedback. People don't necessarily want to always hear from the top shooters. And what the feedback is they can't always relate to them. And they're curious. They want to understand different levels of shooters, but also more information about the industry and the sport in other ways. So you're perfect for that.
Yeah, thank you.
So tell folks, who you are, just some of the highlights.
Yeah, so again, Dominic Bethel. I am the current owner of Gamebore US. So we have exclusive distribution rights for the US for Gamebore cartridges made out of Hull, England. I'm also the owner of Meadows Clay Sports down in central Georgia, right outside Forsyth, Georgia. Been doing that for a while now, and been in the industry for a little while longer than that. Prior to that, I was actually in IT consulting, had kind of started selling some of the ammo stuff on the side, and kind of just filling a niche void in Georgia, before it got to be a little too much and, kind of looked to move and, move into the industry more full time. Don't necessarily miss IT consulting. It was good to me. It was definitely good to me while I did it, but I'm definitely enjoying being in the clay shooting industry as a full-time job. It takes a lot of work, but the people definitely make it worth it.
This is going to be fascinating. So let's just rewind. Are you kind of the tech savvy guy? Like, what got you into IT?
So I actually would say that I used to be more tech savvy than I am. I was actually more on the sales consulting side. And I actually, right when I went into the consulting world, I had a manager of mine, was like, hey, you're pretty tech, your technology, you've got a good grasp on a lot of different aspects, but I need you to play stupid. And,
Okay.
it's kind of a little surprised by that, but his point, through the years, I kind of knew what he was going for, which was, we had on the team, like really, really smart technology guys, and it was their job to scope and implement projects. And they didn't need me kind of getting in the way, right? Like they needed me focusing on my job and kind of working through the projects and getting the projects completed from a sales perspective, but they needed the technology guys being involved. And sometimes if someone kind of gets in the middle of that, it can actually slow things down. So I've tried to shed that off. I do still play the IT director for my family, and my grandmother, she calls me on a regular basis with like, hey, My iPhone's not doing what it should. And then we have to do the whole FaceTime and sharing screen and that experience. But, outside of that, I'm not very
That's funny. I hadn't thought of
tech.
that. Yeah, I'm the IT guy in my household too.
Yeah.
It's just
Everybody
doing that.
needs one.
It was true. Otherwise, yeah, gosh, especially nowadays. Joe was trying to get his tax stuff together and he's not tech savvy, so he was getting a little frustrated. All right, so you did that. And when did you start clay shooting?
I grew up shooting clay targets with my dad and his business partner, and we would kind of do it as a way of preparing to go hunting. I always enjoyed it. I actually did a skeet competition, a long time ago, and told my dad I really enjoyed it. I was young. I was at the time I was running track, playing basketball, doing all this other stuff, and he looked at me and said, "Well, you can do this, but it's going to require you giving up something else, right? Like
Yeah.
you're already doing full-time sports. You can't add anything, but you can certainly add something if you subtract something." And I just wasn't willing to do that, right? At the time I was traveling basketball and traveling track, indoor track, outdoor track. It was,
Oh,
it's kind of all over the map. But then as I got older, graduated college and was, duck hunting a lot more, I started shooting clays more. And it was actually a friend of mine was like, "Hey, we should try one of these competition things." And I was like, like, I don't know. And, just kind of having fun. He said, "No, we should do it." And, he knew I was a pretty competitive guy. And so he kind of suckered me into go into one. And, that was pretty much all she wrote. So I bit the hook hard. And,
how old were you then, approximately?
let's see, I would have been about 27, 28, maybe
Okay.
29. Yeah. Yeah. So, a few
And you're
years.
still doing the IT stuff at that point.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was definitely when that was going on. Yeah. I mean, it was really just like, I was doing the IT stuff and it was hard to get certain ammo products in Georgia. Other parts of the country, it was kind of easy. And out of like a stroke of luck, I guess, I had kind of started a company to just have a side hustle and ended up shifting that to selling ammo, selling shotgun shells. And it was really supposed to start for just like some of my friends, where I was just going to get it, store it in my basement and, just kind of divvy it up between, 6 to 10 of us. And then they just started telling all their friends or their other people that they were meeting, like, "Oh, this guy Dominic has this ammo if you want to get some." And it kind of spiraled a little out of control, and I was running the business out of my garage at my house, and
Oh my
uh,
goodness.
getting freight deliveries to my house, which my neighbors, I'm sure they loved that. And I had heard from one of those original friends that had kind of been buying some ammo from me. It was him who actually said, "Oh, hey, I'm hearing Gamebore is kind of changing in the U.S. There's somebody that's going to import it with a little bit more earnest." I'd gotten in touch with Doug Kirkendall from the previous Gamebore US guys and said, "Hey, I want to carry your product." And so we started getting Gamebore from them, and it wasn't long after that that my wife was like, "Hey, you're pretty busy after work with your other work, and what's the plan here?" And that's when we had made the kind of made the plan to start looking at maybe buying a gun club. Um,
Okay.
and through some conversations with Rick Hemingway, he kind of just approached me and said, "Well, what do you think about the Meadows?" Big fan of the Meadows at the time. Still a big fan of the Meadows.
Yeah, right.
And he's like, I'm thinking about, parting ways with it. And
So he used to own
and
that as well. He had both clubs then?
yep, yep.
Okay.
So he had the Meadows for about 4 years, I think. He had taken over when Wendy Crabtree had left. Wendy and Peter Crabtree ran the Meadows for a pretty good amount of time. A lot of people actually still stop in and occasionally ask, "Well, how's Wendy doing?" Actually, Jack Links. I'm sitting at Jack Links, and a guy came up. I think he was from. I want to say he was from New Jersey, and he just said, "Hey, it's been a long time since I've been to the Meadows. Do you ever hear from Wendy?" And we're like, "No, we don't." But she moved back to the UK, and as far as we know, she's doing well. Yeah. So Rick owned it for about 4 years, and then I took over January 1st, 2020. Right before all the fun started.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta love that. Well, different clubs in different areas of the country, some did great through COVID and some didn't. So which one was yours? Because mine didn't.
Ours
Joe's did.
was right at the beginning, it kind of was like pretty crummy. And then we just kind of started promoting the fact that, like this is an outdoor activity. We had a really generous guy, Glenn Davis, who gave us some chemical stuff, some coatings to put on some of our electrical equipment, just so that, some antimicrobial type stuff. And, we publicized that just to help people feel a little bit more confident and like, oh, hey, I can go outside and shoot and not get sick. And I mean, if you really think back about how crazy things were back in the start of 2020, people were like washing their groceries and stuff.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Yes.
Through all sorts of like crazy things, right? And so you had,
Yes.
then everybody had like 2 different or 3, 4, 5 different kinds of people, right? You had like the ultra cautious, which you're not going to get them out. You had the complete opposite end of the spectrum, which is like they come to the club, they shake hands, they
Yeah.
do everything as a normal person, back in 2019 would do.
Yeah.
So I mean, Meadows did okay. We kind of made it work. We definitely didn't like suffer, but it definitely wasn't what we expected. Kind of with some of the changes we had made. 2020 we hosted Georgia State, and had at the time the largest ever Georgia State event, which was awesome.
Yeah.
We had people travel from all over the country because it was like really the first big shoot, right? I mean, I think they had canceled the previous regional, so it was the first chance. It was June of 2020. It was the first chance people had to really get out.
Yeah.
We had people from an unbelievable number of states that came and they were excited to shoot. And, from right after that, that's when for us, 2020 really kind of started doing really well for us.
Nice.
We had some other events that year, and it was a little scary at the start, but made 2020 and ever since has been on the up and up.
Yeah. Well, especially since you're able to have a state shoot, which is awesome. So you're still full like Gamebore, and that's integrated into Meadows. Is like, do you carry more ammo than other shotgun clubs? Like, how's that working for you there, or is it separate?
Yeah, so it was 2023 is when I took over the Gamebore business from Doug and Dwight. The warehouse is actually on the same grounds. Meadows certainly sells its fair share of Gamebore cartridges. From the gun club side of things, personally, I would love if we only ever sold Gamebore. But we do have, a fair bit of people in the Georgia area that doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to get them off of Winchester or, something, right? So, the gun club does sell Winchester. Right now, like I think the gun club, it's Winchester or Gamebore. Those are the only 2 choices. We sell pretty much every flavor of Gamebore just because the warehouse is right there. It's super easy to do that. But I'm far more, to be perfectly candid, I'm far more involved in the day-to-day of Gamebore and less so the day-to-day of the Meadows. I've got a new general manager at the Meadows, Carl Holland, and he's tasked with the day-to-day. He's there every day. Well, he's actually been there probably too much. He hasn't really had a day off a while, but he's got his own goals for the Meadows, past just mine, and he kind of wants to put his own mark on the Meadows, which is, I think, great, right? Because I think that's the sign of a good manager. My previous manager, Eric Dorsey, he did the same thing. When he jumped in and became the general manager, he wanted to make it his own, and make improvements. And, I think for Carl, it's a lot of the same. It's, hey, how do we, build on the existing improvements? Where do we go from here? And so he's been pretty hands-on just trying to do that. And to some extent, I just want to give him that option, right? Like, hey, go do your thing, right? Like that is what makes a good manager, is someone who can do that. And so I'm kind of watching and seeing how it happens. And obviously, he comes to me with questions or, hey, what do you think about this? And, he gets frustrated when I'm like, I don't care, because like you've given me two options and I like both of them. So whatever you want to do, I don't care. And he gets frustrated with me, but it's like, dude, you've got great ideas, so just
Yeah.
pick one
Nice.
and run with it. So yeah, for me, I'm definitely more focused on Gamebore and how Gamebore spreads across the US. Gamebore 10 years ago was basically non-existent. It wasn't really known by people other than some very serious shooters that maybe had traveled internationally or knew George Digweed, people who really cared about the game, and we've certainly grown in the last, before I took over, and we've grown in other ways since I've taken over and just kind of getting in more pockets of the country, and just working with more gun clubs, more states, and really kind of expanding ourselves. So that's been very exciting to be a part of. And, we've got some other goals on that growth. And, we also have some goals with some specific customers on how we can, uniquely brand ourselves with them and kind of help them grow and market themselves better. So we're not the biggest company. We're certainly not the biggest, ammo company in the world, not even close, but we have some things up our sleeves that kind of help us, be more attractive in other ways. So
You
yeah.
supply shotgun clubs then?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the majority of what we do is working with sporting playgrounds, and like I said, kind of all over the country. We don't do a ton of retail. I mean, we don't work with traditional distributors. We are a distributor, right? So sometimes your small retail stores, they're working with a distributor and getting a wide range of products. They might be getting Winchester, Fiocchi, Remington, whatever. And they can't get us from distribution. But when we work with a club, who wants to put in an order with us, we can supply them. It's just a matter of like, how much do they want to get, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's predominantly what we're working with. And it's been good to us because, typically we're working with gun clubs who they know their customer base wants a high quality product. They've got a good competition, or a group of competitive shooters that practice there and come through there. And
Right.
they're able to move the product pretty well. So that's what's really worked for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Going back to Meadows, I'm just curious, being, a fellow club owner, are you the one that pulls the trigger? Like, are you the one that makes the money decisions, or have you passed that over also?
Yes and no, I guess. I think it really depends. I mean, Carl and I talk a lot. He's certainly in charge of kind of watching the budget. But at the same time, yeah, sometimes I see something I want to do and I'm like, hey, let's go spend money here.
Yeah.
Before Carl came on board, this was actually last year, Meadows became a Beretta premium dealer. And that was something that I wanted to do. Beretta actually came to me and said, hey, we want you to do this. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it. And so we did become a Beretta premium dealer last year. And, it kind of changed the business quite a bit. Started, because there's just not that many premium dealers, right? And so we started selling some more commercial guns, A400s, 694s, some pistols. But in addition to that, obviously with the premium program, we started stocking DT11s. We started selling SL2s, and we've got some great customers now who are interested in doing some more custom, more unique guns as well. And so it's definitely changed us a little bit. And I'm pretty involved with that aspect of the business. And, it's exciting. And I've worked pretty well with the Beretta team. So, but some of the other
Nice.
stuff, day to day, Carl handled that.
Yeah, my son is the manager at my club, and he's 25 right now. He's been there for 7 years, but he didn't come with the clay shooting background, right? He learned just through the stepping up through the process. He started off as the lawn guy, then he would start loading traps and picking up holes and emptying garbage. He just kept moving up, and now he's under Joe as far as like learning how to set targets. But anything, like, I'm the one that pays the bills. I'm the one that does the payroll. I'm the one that, decides, what upkeep or what improvements are going to make to the property. And I just haven't passed that over. But maybe it's because, you hired somebody who was already in the industry, right? Like, you trusted that person. And their knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, Carl wasn't necessarily in the sporting clay industry, but he was certainly, kind of in the gun industry, but he was previously in management, aspect of a business, right? And, it's actually super interesting that was just brought up because we were talking to Rollins Brown together at
Mm-hmm.
Jack Links, and Rollins brought up this idea, and it was related to, Rollins is, got some cattle, right? And he loves his cows, but, and I don't remember the exact verbiage he used, but it was basically relating it to business where you bring in someone who's super capable of doing a job in one industry and you bring them into another industry to kind of do that same job. And they bring a viewpoint that is
Mm-hmm.
so radically different than someone who's, in the clay target industry, for example, right?
Right,
They're
right.
bringing
Yeah.
some expertise from outside the industry and applying it, and it makes the business better for it. And I think that's, that was his way of saying that's kind of what we could see with Carl is like, hey, the gun industry, but you weren't necessarily in the clay target industry. You knew the clay target industry from a spectator or, a participant, but you're
Right.
bringing expertise from, outside the industry in. And it's cool. It's cool how that definitely does change things. And, I'm thinking back for myself, that was kind of applicable to me as well, right? I worked
Mm.
for very corporate companies working alongside Microsoft and Google and Amazon and, all these, Dell, all these big technology companies. And, then I came into the clay target world, which is nothing like those big companies. So it's, yeah, I mean, Carl
Yeah.
certainly has just a very different lens and way of applying things, and it's definitely better for us.
I could see that. And it's like, breaking the mold a bit and thinking outside of this box, that would have kind of invisibly been there if he had just been in the clay shooting world prior to that. It reminds me a little bit of the whole Jack Links concept. Like they came in and they were like, we're not in the competitive shooting world, but we want to do a competition and we want to do it different and bigger and badder than anybody else. And
Yeah.
they came in and, Joe and I had dinner with Jack Links the first year that they did it. And it was very deliberate. He had said, like, we don't want to be like all the other competitions. We want to be bigger. We want to be better. We want to have the wow factor. We want to break all the parameters. And they've been clearly doing that. But they came in from a corporate angle, right? Which is, pros and cons, I think we've all observed over the years of what that's done. I think most of it's positive, but some of the corporate stuff is, like corporate red tape.
Yeah, I mean, overall, like that shoot is definitely evolving the game, and it's been pretty cool to, not just watch it, but be a part of it. I've gone to Jack Links the last 3 years, and every time, you notice changes. And Michael Boyer is doing a great job. He hasn't even been there that long, but you can already see like he's doing a lot of good there, and the
Mm-hmm.
team is kind of like behind him and wanting to do better. And I give them a lot of credit for that. And I mean, next year it's going to be an even bigger shoot. And I mean, I know I'm excited to see, what they've got in store next year. I think it's just going to keep evolving, right? And it's going to not force, but it'll certainly encourage other clubs across the country to evolve their events and, see where that goes.
For sure. For sure. I think that Mike and his wife are just both amazing people. But Mike, I don't know if he's ever not smiling, which who doesn't want to work for somebody like that? He's got to bring that energy to everything he does. And since Jack Links has bought it, I have seen the improvements, right? But the amount of effort that goes into correcting what didn't work the previous year, like the dinner event that it was just hard to find seating at the last year's competition. So this year they get this huge tent, and even that was packed out. So now they got to like double the size of that, but they have the means and the ability to do whatever is necessary. And I just really appreciate that. But the other thing, like the grounds, again, just as a club owner myself, like everything is manicured and taken care of. It didn't matter if you were like, a mile away from the club, way back on some trail. the plants were cut back, the palm fronds were cut back, and I'm super impressed. But, having means it can get you a lot of things.
Yeah, I actually just want to know how much it costs to rent that tent that they had. I mean, we were having a couple conversations throughout the week of, ballparking it. And I think we all probably had some pretty low numbers until we walked in there on Saturday night and saw how much AV and lighting was in there as well. And like, okay, like that, that was a big tent. That was miss. And also
Yeah.
just trying to estimate how many people were actually eating dinner under that tent. Because you factor in that you've got, what was it, 1,500 shooters, call it 1,500. How many of them have wives, or how many of them have parents, and, or other
Yeah.
kids, and it's just unreal to see, how many people are under there.
Well, I know Mike had told me the number. I don't know if I can remember it now, but I feel like it was something like 1,200. But they didn't even fit in there. They had to go in the other eating area for the overflow. So they're already planning for a larger tent next year. And even that is
that 4-day main, you're gonna have a lot more people.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fascinating because normally at events, not that many people stick around to eat. So that was another unique thing about this, that people were sticking around to eat. But I don't know. I think that clubs can mimic some of what they're seeing, but some of it is having deep pockets. Not every club has that ability to have endless supplies of money.
Yeah, I think it's also just a risk, right? It's not all, how much money does the club have? I think there's a large amount of risk in looking to throw an event like that. I know a few years ago there was a club that was going to have, a bunch of payouts, and, they were looking for having a lot of great shooters, a lot of big shooters, a lot of new shooters come and compete for some money. But, for whatever reason, the numbers didn't take off, and they canceled the event, right? They never even had it. And you've got to have the right combination of risk and reward in having a shoot. It's not necessarily going to be a build it and they will come, like it
Right.
has been with Jack Links. I mean, because quite frankly, like that was a build it and they will come. They did. People showed up. People want to keep going. And some of that's timing, right? February is not a bad time of year to have a shoot in Florida, especially South Florida, when you look at how successful some of those other shoots are. But other parts of the country, like there's a risk of trying to have something with like a payout like that, and the people just don't show up, and the numbers don't work.
Yeah, I could see that.
Can't risk having the loss, right? Like there's a lot of clubs that can't risk having that loss.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the advantages for Jack Links is they were following up behind Seminole and Gator. So there was still something established, in my opinion, that they didn't have to work as hard. There were people that were already comfortable coming to Okeechobee and coming to that club. And that club's always been beautiful and well taken care of. So, once they started adding on the huge payouts and all, it was almost a no-brainer, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Meadows were hosting the Shooters Championship, here in a couple months, and that was a shoot too. Like we're put together a pretty large payout plan. There were a lot of really nervous people of like, how is this going to work out? And, we opened registration, and, pleasantly surprised that it didn't take long to sell out. And now we're sitting over 750 people on a 2-day main. And, we're looking forward to a great shoot, but
Nice.
like, there's certainly a lot of risk with that one, of not knowing. And, we were quickly rewarded with the answer. It wasn't like we had to wait that long.
Yeah, right. Be
Been sold out.
tortured. Nice.
we get these emails from Score Chaser about cancellations, and one of my staff was like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do? Like all these people are canceling." And then I was like, pull up Score Chaser and look at the wait list, right? Because we can see how long the wait list is, and there's still tons of people on the wait list. And so, having some cancellations only helps us, right? Because if it's this far out in advance, it gives people a chance to plan to come to that event. And, I can't ever think of an event that had the payout structure of the Shooters Championship with regards to paying as well as it does in class, as well as class concurrent. And that's one of the things that I love. People that come into the pro shop, or they call or email and say, they're like, well, you're not really paying that well in the concurrence. And it's like, well, we're paying class concurrence.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, what is that?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, if you're a lady and you win A class ladies, you get paid the same way AA ladies or master ladies. And then veteran AA gets paid the same way, D class veteran, and just everyone has a little bit more chance in the concurrence of getting
Nice.
money. It's not just HOA for the concurrence. We're paying class as well. And so I don't think, I'm going to just say this, I don't think that was as well understood as we hoped it would be when we opened registration.
Mm.
And I say that because it's very clear, the number of juniors registered isn't kind of where we were hoping it would be. It's actually way lower than what we would expect. But
Yeah.
I'm hoping that through, after this year going to next year, we'll have more junior shooters who go, oh my God, I have a really good shot at making some money. I want to go do that event.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I can't think of any shoot that's had class concurrence. So maybe going forward, we'll see other clubs adopt that, or we'll just see more understanding from the shooter of what that is and that they are willing to come to Georgia and try to get it.
I think so. And it reminds me of, it's just a matter of marketing, like you did at COVID, right? It's how you got the word out there and educated people. And I'd be doing all sorts of social media and videos teaching people what that meant. I don't think it would take you very long at all to get what you're looking for.
But Mr. Zuckerberg's company has gotten very good at targeting companies like ours and
yes,
making it more challenging. And that's a whole nother subject of what we've been kind of dealing with in the last couple of years. And, we're hoping that we can get a little relief on that front.
Yeah, no, I am praying for the same thing. I mean, for the Shotgun Club, I used to be able to get away with running a Facebook ad every once in a while. But no, I'm banned. I can't do any more ads because you can't say gun, you can't say shotgun, you can't say shoot, you can't say whatever. It's ridiculous at this point. And I'm sure you've looked into it, but it's okay if you're a brick and mortar and you're a legitimate business selling guns and ammo. You're supposed to be able to post on a page for that brick and mortar, but you're also supposed to be able to share that to your personal page without penalty on either. Yeah, but that's not the case.
Yeah, it's not always how it works, right? I mean, we realized we were pretty heavily shadow banned, and we kind of tried to do a little bit of a reset. We updated a lot of the terms and conditions or our information stuff on the back end to show we're legitimate, tax ID, all this fun stuff, right? That Facebook shouldn't be worried about. And it made a tiny bit of a difference, but at the same time, the first time we listed a DT11 for sale, they flagged it and deleted it. And it's well, we're legitimate. You say we're allowed to do this, but
right.
Then so yeah, we're slow rolling it. We're going to take our time trying to figure that one out. But yeah, it's frustrating, right? It's hard to get information out. We're actually putting some effort now going forward into some of our email campaigns, trying to maybe have more campaigns, instead of doing a once a month newsletter, we're looking at maybe having twice a month. We're going to be soon trying to figure out how we give people the option of signing up for emails so that they want that news just because they're not able to get it on social media. And maybe that's the answer, right? Maybe we have to do a better job of marketing ourselves in email and kind of getting information people want to their email and letting them, click and read it.
For sure.
Because social media is definitely not the way for our industry to get information out there.
It's crazy because one of my employees, she might go around and get videos at one of our NSCA events, and she puts it to a catchy tune. She does a reel out of it, and those get flagged all the time. And it could be a dog, a golf cart, just the sun, over the trees. But then there's driving by that one person in the stand that has a gun in their hand. And it's been frustrating because last year I hired a marketing company to teach me how to, basically have viral reels and all that. And I don't know, you're probably not on social media much, but in the last year I've been doing a ton of freaking social media reels. But it's even discouraging to them, and they're experts, and their whole team is like all these experts all over the world. And we can go to, let's say, Beretta or whatever, and they're showing guns like crazy. Any of those gun manufacturers are able to show guns on their social media, and I'm not quite certain how they're able to do it and we're not.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, you're still figuring it out yourself.
I think certain companies have, I think a couple of manufacturers have companies that manage theirs for them, and they're doing it for a large number of companies, and maybe they have it figured out, right? Like maybe it's not Beretta that has it figured out or Krieghoff that has it figured out. It's actually the company that they're, kind of working, right? And I don't know who has that or who doesn't, but
Yeah.
I have heard that a couple of them do. And, they have a strong social media presence, and it's just, they're hiring the right people to kind of manage that for them.
Yeah, interesting.
But those, that's what they do, so.
Yeah. Yeah. So how often do you actually shoot?
As much as I can, but not often enough. I used to go to the, come in and work, and then at the end of the day, I'd, be going home. I was like, crap, I didn't practice today. I wanted to practice. I didn't practice. So I kind of changed my mindset a little bit to where, I'd pick a time of the day and I'd say, no matter what I'm doing at that time, I'm going to go practice.
Did that work?
Well, no, I mean, it did,
Yeah.
and I'd go in and I would tell people like, hey, like, let's talk about this, or let's meet about this, or let's plan this for the day. But at 10:30, I'm shooting.
Yeah.
I'm taking an hour. If I need to stay till 7 and continue to have conversations, we'll stay till 7, or, I don't want to keep employees long, right? But that was my sentiment is like, I'll do what I have to, but I'm going to carve out an hour to practice. And so, it's basically once a week that I get to shoot for an hour, hour and a half, sometimes, maybe a little longer depending on the time of year, but it's just gotten to be something where it's like, I have to carve it out.
Yeah.
I have to say, this is what I'm going to do. It's built into my day, which is nice. I mean, I like that. I feel fortunate at the same time because, like, there's people that don't get to shoot once a week. There's people that shoot 5 days a week or more, but, I feel fortunate being in the industry and getting to at least shoot, kind of a guaranteed 1 day a week type thing. I mean, Gamebore, we support a lot of, we try to support the clubs that support us. So with like when they're hosting our regional, we want to sponsor and we want to come and be a part of the event. And so I always make it a point to shoot one event a day. Like at Jack Links, like that didn't even take that much time. I shot 50 bird feed task Wednesday and 50 bird feed task Thursday, and then one main event a day. It's not taking that much time out of the day to do that, and so I love shooting. That's why I got into this. I'm not going to lose sight of that, and so I do prioritize kind of enjoying the game as well as working in the game.
That's pretty great because anything else, it's almost like what the shoemaker doesn't always fix his own kid's shoes when he gets home, or the painter doesn't always paint his own house. I think that in a lot of industries, once you own something and you're running it, you end up not being able to do what, the shooting or whatever that originally got you into it. Joe was talking about becoming like a charter fishing captain. And then he was like, wait a minute, then I won't be able to just come out and fish for myself and have fun.
That's exactly right. And I mean, that's kind of, any industry you work in, if you're working in the industry, that's also your hobby, like that, it can happen easily, right? Where you lose the love of the hobby, the game. And I refuse to let that happen to me. I want to keep shooting, and becoming a better shooter is important to me, and it just takes balance, right? I mean, I've got family at home, kids that I want to spend time with, and so it's just it's a balancing game of like, where do I shoot? Which events do I go to? Making sure I'm spending time with the kids and wife and traveling with them, and, kind of showing them all the great things our country or world has to offer. And so it's just a balance game.
What are your goals with clay shooting as far as, keeping it a priority and wanting to make sure you're practicing once a week with the intention of what?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a straight stay pretty conservative in my goals. I mean, I really, I want to see my overall average go up. When the past couple of years, I haven't shot really any monthly shoots, which, right, I mean, everybody technically considers those like easier targets, right? Because you're not setting them as difficult as a Jack Links or a regional. So I don't shoot those anymore. And so my goal of having incremental increases or measurable increases in my overall average is important to me because I'm only going to major events. I go to regionals and Jack Links and Gator Cup, and unfortunately, I'm missing Seminole Cup this year, but that's always one of my favorite events of the year. But I go to nationals, and so when you really look at how many people are going to those events, how many people you're competing against, my goal is to see my average go up and my shooter ratio go down. Last year I did see my average go up, a little bit, and like that was pretty exciting. But I'm in master class and my ratio, started out really good. And I was like, hey, yeah, like we're on the right track. And, as we went to more events of the year, like the US Open and World FITASC and Nationals, my ratio started to go down or, started to go up. It started to go up. And I was like, no, that's not what I want. I don't, average good going up, ratio going up is not a good thing. But someone at NSCA thought I shot well enough to not downclass me. So I guess I did something right. That's my goal. I mean, I would love to, I've never HOA'd a shoot. I've come pretty close, on a side event or something. So that's a goal, but it's not necessarily a measurable goal for me. Mine is more about my personal performance.
Yeah. Well, I've observed talking to you that you're pretty down to earth. You're pretty optimistic. You tend to see like the good in situations, which is all pretty impressive because I would say most of these humans aren't like that. So I'm a little curious, like, where do you think that came from?
Don, that's a great question. I don't know. Probably from, I would say probably more instilled from my parents.
Yeah.
I mean, when I see it with my own kids where you see them getting down about something and you've got to get them to kind of adjust their thought process and kind of let them see like the good in something, right? And
Yeah.
everything happens for a reason, good, bad, or different. And when things do happen and change and you have a negative view on them, you're going into the rest of it with a negative view. And I'm pretty firm believer in that you can't do that. You've got to be open to what good can come of situations, because there's a lot of times in our lives where something we initially perceive as bad turns into something like, hey, this is actually great for me. I'm a better person for it, or I'm better off for it, or whatever. And
Yeah.
my parents certainly did that with me, and it's something I try to do with my kids. It's just, yeah, your toy broke, but look at the bright side is you have other toys or something.
Right. One of the things that I've observed from my own life is like the things that were the most challenging. And I questioned myself, like when I went through my first divorce, am I doing the right thing? I had 2 young kids. It was devastating. It was hard. I couldn't make up my mind. I kept going back, like this whole thing. But, you fast forward and you get past the really difficult part of that thing. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so much happier and I'm so much healthier now and things are so much better for me. Looking back, it was worth it, and then kind of like you said, there are so many times in my life at this point that's happened that now I catch myself on the front end. I'm like, don't fall for it, Dawn. Don't fall for your brain trying to tell you this is horrible and catastrophic and the end of the world. Like there's going to be good that comes out of this because life has proven that to you over and over and over again.
Yeah, I was actually having a conversation recently with a friend, and we were talking about how people are sometimes scared to fail. And I think there was a speaker at one of the conferences I went to a long time ago. The mindset, or he said, the best thing we can do is fail faster, and the faster that we fail, the faster we're solving for situations in our lives, right? And like if you try something and you fail, you try something else, you fail, you try something else, like you're constantly improving on what you're trying to do. And eventually you're going to see success from it, right? And so if we take too long to figure out, the failure point, then we're just prolonging the success.
Uh-huh.
And that's always kind of stuck with me as well, is just, there's nothing wrong with failure, right? What's wrong about failure is not identifying it or not moving on from it.
Uh-huh.
That's when failure's a
Learning
problem.
from it.
Right.
Exactly.
As long as we're learning from it, you're moving on, you're growing as a person, and you're going to find the success you want faster.
Absolutely. It reminds me of like an inventor, like the invention of the light bulb, where every time it didn't work, there was something to learn and to apply it, and then, try that. And then that worked or didn't work, or maybe it worked a little bit, but now you got to tweak it again. And that's the whole process of inventing something until you get to the point where you succeed, and then you want to improve on it further, right? And that's really the journey for every shotgun shooter, every athlete, every human, really. And what happens instead for most people is, like, let's say they have a miss or misses in the station, they would rather be upset and have a tantrum and think that, it's horrible, instead of taking it like the inventor's brain, where you go, oh, wait a minute. So what happened there? What can I learn from it? What can I tweak? And a lot of things can be tweaked in the next pair of the next station. Like I said, pull before I was ready, or I was too worried about the squad mates, or what's the direction, the sequence that other person shot these targets. There's things like that can be instantly corrected. But a lot of shooters either just get so upset that they missed, or they have learned from somebody else to just pretend you did break it, or just ignore it. Like, just come on, buddy, just move on, forget about it, and that's not the way to get to the end result, to get the kind of, like you said, like the faster you can have that failure, the faster you're going to learn where the correction and what you need to work on, and the faster that you'll get to your end result or your goal, whatever that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And, coupling that, whether it's, our professional careers or our shooting, using people who are experts to help us learn faster too is the other part of that, right? And so, I was recently asked by somebody, like, oh, well, how much coaching should I get? Or like, when should I get a coach? I don't have a coach now. When should I get that? And it's like, well, why are you even trying to compete in anything without a coach, right?
Yeah.
You don't start Little League Baseball as a 6-year-old without a coach, right? Like that, you can't expect to do anything with that, right? And honestly, being a 40-year-old human or 50-year-old man, like, doesn't exclude you from, like, if you want to do something and you want to be competitive, like, you have to have someone who helps you to do that.
Absolutely.
And I think, like, that's how people are in the professional world as well. Like the people who really do well, they have a mentor, whether they even understand it or not. I mean, I still am kind of shocked at adults who, they have a mentor, but they don't really realize it.
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of all do. But you got to find the right one. It's the same thing. It applies the same way largely, and
it does.
Helps you grow dramatically, right? And I would not be shooting as well as I am right now, for myself, right? Like, I'm happy with my shooting right now, but I wouldn't be where I am without, having a couple coaches that have made a significant impact. I mean, I've shot with Zach Keenbaum and Kevin and Michael quite a bit, and Shelby Moon has even gone out and kind of watched me shoot and give me feedback. And without certain things like that, there's no way I'd be as happy as I am with my shooting where I'm at right now. And there's things that they all say that, when I'm in the box and I'm looking to pull a trigger, that I have them, like, things that they've said just like on repeat in my head, and it's awesome.
That's a fascinating topic too. I don't know if you've heard of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill from the early 1900s. Have you heard of that book?
I haven't.
It's pretty popular in like the self-empowerment, self-growth world or whatever. But he had actually interviewed like Carnegie and Vanderbilt, like all those guys back then, and to learn, what's the mindset, think and grow rich. Like, what's the mindset of some of the wealthiest people in the world, and some of the ways that they, go about their day-to-day life and their beliefs and all of that. And one of the things he repeatedly says over and over again in that book is to have a mastermind group, meaning you're not ever going to be, should you ever want to be, the expert at everything, right? Like, you are gifted at what you do, and ideally you then hire others, like, meaning unless you want to be an accountant, then you should hire an accountant to do your accounting so you can do the thing that you're good at, right? And you should hire a tax person, whatever. Oh yeah, I'm going to hire a mechanic to work on my car because I don't want to learn how to work on my car. But you take that concept and you carry it over again to sport, clay shooting. And the idea is, there are experts out there to help you. And you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to think you are. You don't have to, unless you want to be an expert, you don't waste your time, right? Just hire one and learn what you need to learn from that person so you can focus on what you're good at or what you're wanting to excel at. And so we should all have like an entourage helping us, and they're all experts at whatever they do. And that's in business and personal and life. That's why I have someone that cuts my hair. I don't want to learn how to cut my hair.
No. Well, I mean, that's actually, that's a good way of putting it too, right? Because, we all we all need to kind of focus on what we're good at, or, listen, and learn from people, that are really good at what they do when it is something we want to learn, and like, I will hire a plumber any day of the week rather than do plumbing. Right. That's one thing I don't want to know how to do. Not at all.
It would be great to have that mindset as a shooter. It's okay to not know it all. It's okay to realize there's much to learn and that you can go to someone and they can help you. And ideally they should, right?
Yeah. And I think the other thing that's interesting about it too, and this is again on the subject of coaching, something that I was talking to someone about recently, which is, I think there's this mindset sometimes that you have to pick your coach and you should only get lessons from one coach. And I'm pretty adamantly against that belief because I think that, we always hear things differently from different people, or for whatever, like there's a million reasons why we hear things, it could be the same thing being said, but a different way, or we're just not focusing the right way, whatever. But, that's why I've gotten lessons from a couple, because there's things that Kevin says different from Zach and things that Zach says different from Kevin that sometimes, like at the, 2 months later, I realized that, oh, they were saying the same thing, but I understood it, this one thing better from Kevin, and I understood this other thing better from Zach. And I've always enjoyed talking to David Radulovich. He's got a very different way of saying certain things, but it's very interesting hearing him talk about, certain aspects of the game and vision and, all sorts of different subjects, but he says it different than the other two. Right. And so like you have these conversations with these, professional people in the game, and you just don't hear it the same every time. So I think can be super beneficial to getting lessons with more than one coach. Some coaches have radically different ways of approaching a target, and you got to kind of figure out what works for you.
Right. And that's where I was thinking also. You got to figure out what works for you. And again, Dominic, you've got like that good mindset going into that. But to say there's another side of that coin, there's a lot of shooters that are almost desperately going from instructor to instructor and not really giving, and they're almost like all in with one instructor at a time. And then they go to the next and they're totally changing everything. And then, in the competition, they like revert back to the old way because this one's not breaking the targets, and they're kind of just all over the place. And that's not a healthy way of going from instructor to instructor. But there is definitely a healthy way to do it. And that's what you just explained, because everybody is different and you can get bits and pieces from different people and find your own, what works best for you, but also their teaching style and their technique and how they communicate and whether you even like them or not. Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, and you look at some of the students that have seen success after like extensive coaching from, a couple coaches or something. And I'll pick on Tom and David, right? Like they went to Wendell Cherry forever, but they've also evolved into having some of their own, ideas of shooting, and they've evolved, some of what they've learned from Wendell into some of their own. And Tom and David don't shoot the same, but they each have like their own evolution of like what Wendell told them.
Right.
And I think people like Connor Daniel and Zach Kienbaum, like I think that'll be really interesting to see Connor Daniels shooting evolve, because like he was a big Zach was his coach, or is his coach,
Right.
but he's going to evolve that, especially as he gets better and better and shoots more and more and gets older, and he's going to develop his own style more and more. And, it'll be fun to watch all of these shooters, how they evolve, and they're not going to be clear cut copies of their coach by any means,
Right.
but they'll be better shooters for it for sure.
Right. That's a great point. And it is important to not just try to mimic someone exactly. It's like, find your own rhythm, find your own way of doing things. Like over the years, there are people like, oh, I want to shoot really slow like Wendell, or I want to shoot really slow like David. And then they try to mimic it without even understanding what all they're doing. They just try to slow down and maybe use some of the same hand movements or something. There's something that those guys are doing, and that works for them. It doesn't mean it works for everybody. They're like Brandon. He's much faster shooter. He's on the whole other side of the spectrum. And it reminds me of a client I had years ago, and she was a speaker. It was actually one of those multi-level marketing things, and she was one of the high-end earners. And so she had to regularly go on stage, and she would literally freeze. Like she would get out there in front of the microphone and she could not speak at all. And that's what she hired me for, like, because she would just freeze. And she had told me that she tried different things. And one of the other speakers that was regularly on stage, he would run around behind stage. He would do jumping jacks and run all around and do all this stuff. And so she tried that, and she was like, it just made it worse. But she was a pretty mellow person. So one of the things, I learned, like, working with her is you got to find your own method. For her, she needed peace. Like, she needed to meditate. She needed to calm down. She needed to do some slow breathing. She didn't need to be doing jumping jacks. So you got the Brandon Powell that shoots like that fast, and you got Wendell who's going to go right up against the time limit. And you have to find your own niche and what works for you.
Yeah, for sure. It's absolutely true.
So, okay, Meadows in Georgia. How do you say the little town? Forsyth, which is located where in Georgia?
Just north of Macon. So if you fly into the Atlanta airport, up in Atlanta, we're right at like an hour south of the airport, due south on I-75, and then we're like 15 minutes north of Macon, Georgia. But Forsyth is a cool little town. We got plenty of good restaurants. So when people do come through, there's plenty of hotels, great restaurants right there in the middle of the state. Not far from Big Red Oak, not far from Cherokee Rose, not that far from, I think, an hour, 20 minutes from Old Hudson. So there's plenty of great places in Middle Georgia to shoot. But we hope people come to Forsyth because it's a pretty cool little town.
Nice. Yeah. So you've got that when you do some large events there. You've got the Gamebore. You're helping with Gator Cup, right? You help out.
Yeah, so definitely do help Rick Hemingway with a couple of his shoots. He has me help him with some of his vendor or sponsor coordination stuff. I've been doing that since his U.S. Open in 22. I love backwoods, and Rick and his entire crew have always been super awesome for me and the Meadows. And, we get all of our Promatic parts from him, and working with Warren and getting that. So it's awesome to work with Rick and the backwoods staff on some of those large events and the Gator Cup. And this year he's got the Southeastern Regional, so I'll be helping out with that one as well. And I like helping him out with those. And again, it's easy to do because you've got a great team up there who are super collaborative. Just have an interest in delivering really good events for the shooter, sometimes at the cost of being more profitable, right? Let's push the envelope of the event. And that's one of the things, I look up to Rick on big time, right? And we've tried to emulate that in some of our shoots. And I know some other, general managers are doing the same for their clubs. And, it's really fun to see that. And then like everyone goes home talking about how great of an event it was. And, how many times have people left backwoods and maybe they say, oh my God, the targets were really hard, but holy cow, that sushi bar was unreal. It's just a matter of like making it fun.
Yeah.
And balancing everything out with a shoot. And I've always really doing that. So So yeah.
Nice. Perfect. Well, I do want to tell listeners that they can get some free goodies at my dongrant.com/free, whether it's for my mental training or free golf cart or push cart rental at my shotgun club. And what would be one piece of advice or wisdom that you'd want to pass on to the listeners based on all you've learned up to now in your life?
Don't believe everything you read on the internet.
Oh yeah, nice one.
No, I would say, like, I think there's I guess what I would say is that we have to always be investing in ourselves, right? Whether it's be, taking time to ourselves to do the things we love, or just the continual education of, reading things that interest us, or like how we can help ourselves, right? I mean, talking with people who stimulate our brains and don't bring us down, like that's just a constant evolving ourselves to try to make ourselves better in one way or another, right? Even if it's just as simple as like reading a book and staying sharp and learning something. For me, it's the last few years have been a lot more about, reading certain books that I feel like I can get something out of and apply it to my everyday life, and then definitely just for me too, it's like I said earlier, it's balance, balancing out the work, the fun, the family, getting some time with everyone.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's great advice. Great advice. And you have to be deliberate. Like you said, you've got to say, today at 10:30, I'm doing blah, 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 and then do it no matter what you're doing at that time, right?
Organization. Yeah. Even if other people feel like you're just screwing off, it's important to you, then make sure you do the things that are important to you and be deliberate. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. What's some contact info for you?
All of it. I'm easy to reach via email. If you want to get in touch with the Meadows, the best way to do this is info@meadowsclaysports.com. If you're interested in learning anything about Gamebore, you can email info@gameboreus.com. My cell phone number, reach out to me anytime, 678-386-1356. Had that same phone number since I was in the 8th grade, so
holy,
it's easy to keep around. Yeah, those are the 3 easiest ways to reach me.
Okay, sounds perfect. And I look forward to seeing you soon at Gator Cup, and I think the regional too. I think I'm planning to be there as well. So,
excellent. Well, thank you, Dawn, for having me. This was awesome. Really do appreciate it, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you.
And check. Make sure he gets his midday nap. I know that helps him stay sharp.
Well, you'll all be happy to hear that I harass him all day long, so he gets a dose of it back, even when he's not at competitions.
Good. And congratulations on y'all's engagement as well.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, marriage is a month and a half away.
Thank you for joining us on Clay Mastermind with Dawn Grant. Mental excellence and industry insights. Brought to you by the Clay Lab. We hope you found today's episode inspiring and informative. Remember, mastering the mental game is key to unlocking your full potential on the course. And through our conversations with industry leaders, we aim to provide you with valuable insights into the world of clay shooting. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow, rate, and share it. For more insights, training tips, and updates on upcoming events, Dawn Grant and Amelia Shotgun Sports are on all social media platforms. Go to dawngrant.com and come shoot at Amelia Shotgun Sports. Stay focused, stay driven, and keep pushing your limits. Until next time, Dawn wishes you success and happiness on your journey to peak performance and industry mastery.